My friend, today let's make a melody. My name is Wago. Howard, I hope you really dig music. We're going to talk you through the idea of how to take an idea that's click-clacking around in your brain, maybe put it down on a piano, put it to a recorder. I don't know. Maybe do something really cool with it and add a little substance like a melody, a chorus line. We're going to show you how to tab this right out and how to put it on your staff so you can write it down. And here's the crux of it. Unless you record it or you write it down, after you write like 30, 40, 50 different little melodies or songs or progressions or ideas, you tend to lose them. Now, if you don't lose track of how many melodies and progressions you write when you don't write it down, awesome on you. But I just cannot remember 20,000 different melody lines. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how to put this in the context, the foundation of music. So if you do not know the foundation of music, this is the video for you. We're going to spend about 15 minutes going over why we learn the foundation like we do in each one of these series. We're going to use something called the circle of fifths. We're going to talk about relativity of common chords or common tones or common family chords, what fits together quite nicely. And then we're going to put that all together in a nice little progression showing you what a period is, what a phrase is, and then how to make certain melody motifs. Things to look for, things not to do while trying to write melodies out in a given key. I hope you dig it. If you do, subscribe, put something cool in the comment section. Remember, as every Tuesday, try to do something cool. I answer Q&A, which means if the topic that we're doing, I think tomorrow is how to play any tune like it was last week. We go over stuff like melodic minor. If you don't know what melodic minor is, you need to know what the foundation of music is. So Mondays live and Tuesdays live work hand in hand. This is on 9 to 10 Hawaiian Standard Time. However, you can pop in whenever you are and watch the old videos in the playlist, and I will answer those questions because I have an IT guy and we definitely make sure that we answer all the questions that are music related. Other than that, hope you dig the music community that we're doing here. We highlight other YouTube artists, and then we do interviews as well. So a plethora of different videos and concepts on this channel. If you want to, we're going to be playing a little bit of music over there. Nice backdrop. And then here's what it looks like with the chordy. The concept is, if we write a little melody, I'd love to throw it on the board, show you what these notes look like in order. When you play it on the piano, it looks kind of cool with the chordy here. Hopefully it'll make a lot of sense to those of you who are taking a gander at this. Other than that, I would love for you to be able to ask questions. So if you're watching this right now and you know what the circle of fifths is, please shout out a key signature while I'm drawing it up here on the board. As with every session, I like to do the circle of fifths. Let's see if that's large enough. Also, can you hear me? Can you hear me? When we do this circle fifths, the key that has no sharps and no flats is going to be C. Then it goes to G. We have a D, an A, E, B, F sharp, and then C sharp. Now, I am going to be writing C flat here, G flat here, and D flat here. That's because when we go the circle fourths, we get an F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat. 1, no sharps, no flats. 7 that have flats, 7 that have sharps. So we refer to this when we're talking about which one has sharps, which one has flats. And then this builds out our concept of how to relatively go to any chord or any key. This is the foundation of music. And for those of you who are struggling with beginner concepts, it is much easier to remember C, E, and G as being a chord that lasts with 3 notes called a triad. Meaning, when we have a clef, does not matter what that clef is, this just happens to be the treble clef. The idea is, when we see a key signature, or in the case of C major, the lack thereof, we know that we are in the key of C major. There are no sharps and no flats. When we move to the left or the right, it doesn't matter which side you write it on, as long as when you write it, you keep your flats on one side and your sharps on another. If we're going to take F, we find that the G clef, which is our treble clef, if we have a treble clef and we get rid of the top little loop-de-loop, this most definitely looks like a lowercase g in the English vernacular. Therefore, the G clef is called the treble clef. This line is the G note, so when we see this G, skip the F that is below it, and we play the E, skip the D that's below it, and then we play middle C, or the note on a ledger line. Whenever you see this triad stacking, that means that you will play them in order. And more importantly, you're playing the chord of C major right in the middle of a piano, not down here in the C3, C2, or C1. Each one of these being a different variation of the octave. There are 8 of them on the piano. And to know what your foundation is when you put clefs together, it's great to know that from this C up to this C is called a perfect eighth. The movement between this 1 and 5 is called a perfect fifth. And the movement between this interval is called a major third. Just be clear, the interval between this one, the secondary, is called a minor third. And then we have up top, these two would be a perfect fourth. So there are a lot of comparisons going along with this, just having 3 notes. Our 1 to 3 is a major third. Not to be confused with a minor third, which is a half step lower consisting of an E flat. Whenever learning music or trying to write a melody, to know what all the notes are in a given chord structure, like this one would be considered the chromatic C. If you just played all 7 notes that were a part of just C major, not including all 12 of those tones, you would achieve having a 7-note structure called a diatonic scale. So the reason why this is called Ionian is a type of mode. It just means major scale. It has a tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Or in the Western era, we say whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. That means that when we play a series of notes out of this key, we get different structures. Let's just use the key of F. Now, F is found in the key of C major, as in C major has no sharps and flats. It is called C Ionian. When we play a 1, 3, and a 5, and then a 2, 4, and a 6, we achieve something called triads. The sonority, or the way that it feels, what type of triad is it? It depends off of those first 2 notes, the dyads. C to E is a major third, therefore, when you stack a major third and a minor third, you achieve a major chord. When you stack a minor third and a major third, you still have the same spacings, but now the major third and minor third flip to flop. That means the distance between the first 2 notes is no longer a major third, it's a minor third. The way that I view this is the shortest distance betwixt any 2 notes on any instrument in the Western ear is going to be called a minor second, or a diatone, or a half step. These 2, when you see them on music, they generally will have a note that is played through and then another note that is touching it. It is the only 2 notes in all of music that touch each other. So when we play 1 minor second and we add it to another minor second, C to C sharp is 1 minor second. C sharp to D is another minor second. When we continue this process, you'll find that 4 of them make up a major third, and 3 of them make up a minor third. So if we were to go to our major third and then start that process to this, we would see 1, 2, 3. Well, major third, minor third. That's how all music is made. This is how every single instrument works. It's called tertiary harmony, and this is the foundation of music. So, when creating melody lines, you might be able to go, but what does all that mean? You have to have some context to put that into a key so you know what notes to throw in your transcriptions or your notations, so thusly you could put it all together and have a finished product rather than just something abstract and vague. So what I'd love to do right now is just show one of these, let's say in the key of F. So let's go over to the other side. I'm going to write up our staff. And sorry about having to go slow here, but if I don't go slow, these markers will not write. And I want this to be nice and legible. And I'm going to go down below, and I'm not going to be doing a full period. I'm just going to be doing a melody line, which means when we play this first pattern, we will have all of this starting again. And if you're following along, I said we're going to be playing in the key of F. That means there's one flat. And then as far as like your lines, if these two are connected and you're playing them at the same time, you don't need to put the time signature, which means the beats per minute or how many different notes will be in this clef. What we're trying to achieve right here is to be able to see that the notes that we're using from the key of F major has a 1 chord, a 4 chord, and a 5 chord. The next 3 are going to be your minors, and then the last one is going to be your diminished. The way that I use the circle of fifths is for exactly that purpose. I've written this so many times and explained it so many different ways and written so many songs using this that now I've got the picture in my mind. It is second nature to see C up top, go 4 spaces over, and see its relative minor, A minor. G major's relative minor, F major's, A flat has F minor. You could also do it the other way. You could pick out one of these keys like C sharp and go, cool, C sharp, its relative major is E major by just continuing that circle over 4 notes. That is a wonderful way to grasp chords when you're trying to learn these triads. So, in the key of F, what I did was I just drew staff or staves. The idea is you don't want to really have an anacrusis or a pickup note or a pickup measure right in the beginning. You would kind of want to have something that's flowing to have 4 measures. So what I'd like to do is just not have a pickup and go directly through. I'm going to mark these out as having, and now, again, this is the treble clef. This is not the bass clef, so they are not connected. And the phrasing over here doesn't have one of these. It has one of these. It means that both of these lines are going to be played simultaneously, and or it could be a moving thought depending on how you notate it. But I do want to put down a measure. I'm going to do this equal because I'm going to try and write a little smaller, and we said we wanted 4. So the whole idea of this is when we're writing a melody line, we want this whole thing here to be a period or an idea, or not a period, a phrasing. The kind of idea where you would be like, if we weren't talking music and we were just talking like grammar, and we wanted to say a sentence like, did you watch the sunset yesterday? And then the answer is, yes, I watched the sunset yesterday. It was beautiful. If you get rid of the words from there and just use the inflection that the human naturally does during conversation, you would have The idea is one would be a question, the antecedent, and the other one would be answering that question, as if you're posing something here, and then this one completes a thought. Now, this isn't the only way to make a melody. This is just a way to make a melody. This is one dude doing some music stuff on a YouTube channel out of all of the YouTube stuffs. So, please bear in mind, this is just my opinion, and we're also going to go down here to the treble clef. If this was a bass clef, I would not be writing it on the middle line, the D line, but this is the treble clef. We're going to be doing one complete idea. Again, we're going to draw this in. I don't want this to be too very loud. Now, lots of people put their markings for dynamics at the very end. I don't so much like doing that when I'm trying to write something in idea. I want to have an idea contextualized. So, let's think about tempo. How would we like to play this in the key of F? We have now said that our 1 chord is going to be an F major. We're going to play a 2 chord, a 3 chord, a 4 chord, a 5 chord, a 6 chord, and then a diminished 7th chord. Now, for those of you who do not know what any of these are, I am writing them with the key signature. I'm writing them in lowercase letters if they are a minor dyad. In the key of F major, when we play this on a piano or any other, we would have an F note being our root. We would then have a G as our second. But notice how the 2 notes that I played are the B flat and the G. In the key of F, there is no B flat. Therefore, don't worry about it, Scro. When we move up, we cannot play G major, which would have a B, but we need to play a minor 3rd. That gives us our G minor triad because the first 2 notes in that 3-note structure are going to be G and B flat. So one of the cool things we could do at this point I would recommend this to everybody writing their first melodies, is go over here and just write out your chords. F, A, C, major. G, B flat, D. When we go to A, C, and E, it's the same A minor that you saw from the key of C major, right? Our next is going to be B flat because it has to include the key signature. The key in this, G, A, B flat, which means every B flat. If we had a note right below our ledger line, that B note would be our B flat. So when we say B flat, D, and F, it's not like a diminished. It doesn't sound like a minor third stacked with a minor third. It sounds like a major. So very cool. When we go to our C, C, E, G is a major. It's the major fifth. D, F, A is a D minor. D minor is the relative minor of F, meaning when we write, if the song has a very happy flow, like this would be the key of C major. I would write that in the key of C major because it only quite literally used the D minor, the tube, at the end. And that quite literally could have been phrased as a PAC because I was using these. Anywho, if we did this and we went to a 4 chord and then a 5 chord and then back to the 1 and didn't use any minor keys, that would feel more like a major. So I would put that in the key of C major. If we were writing something like... even though it has a C major in there, the 6th of the chord, the A minor, it had a half step between the A and then the A flat, or otherwise enharmonically called the G sharp in this, because you want to have C, D, E, F, G, A. It made me think, well, my goodness, this isn't just an A minor or A aeolian. We use the lending tone or the leading tone from the key of A major, which brings us to a huge idea with the foundation of music. Even though you are playing a minor chord, you are viewing all of music through the foundation of the major structure. Meaning, in the key of A major, you have A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. When you play a minor, you flatten the 3rd, you flatten the 6th, and you flatten the 7th. That gives you natural minor. When you alter that G and have a G sharp, you are adding back A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp to A. This is called harmonic minor. That is a great telltale sign that when you are reading music and you see the clef, if there are accidentals, which means an accidental would be the sharps, the flats, or the naturals. If you see these inside of this piece of music, chances are you are playing in a minor key. So always bear that in mind. It's a great way to start viewing both key signatures, your relative major and your relative minor. Lastly, after we get through here, we're going to have, what is this? D, E. So we've got our diminished. E, skip F, play a G, skip the A, hit that B, but not just a B, folks. We're going to play a B flat, and that definitely sounds like a lending tone. So all of our chords are F major, G minor, A minor, B flat major, C major, D minor, and then we've got our E diminished. And it resolves back to our F major. Gorgeous key. So today we're just going to take a little melody line. We're going to write it. There are multiple ways to write melody lines. This is just one way to do that. So having said that, we know what the 7 diatonic notes are in this scale, meaning do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, starting off with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. When we play these, we can choose anything and we can put these into our melody. And the one thing I want to try and do, last week when we did this, we wrote in the chords as they would fall, being the major 1, which is the tonic, the 2, which is the subtonic. We have our mediant, we have our subdominant. We have our dominant. We have our, this is the relative minor, natural minor, but when we do this one's called the submediant. I don't really want to go into the explanation right now about why that is, but it works well when we're talking about minor chords. And then the last one's called the lending or the leading tone. Our 5 chord, when we play a 5 dominant, which means we're going to play C, E, G, and then add the B flat, that gives us a C7. Every key, when you play the 5th of the chord and you add another 3rd stacked tertiarily, major 3rd. Oh, here, let me throw on the chord so you can look at the now. Major 3rd, minor 3rd, and then minor 3rd. So major, minor gives us a dominant chord. Does not matter what that chord is, it will always produce that tone. And then it will go back to the 1 of that chord. So let's say I wanted to go to F, C7 is going to sound great, and then it resolves perfectly into the 1 chord. It's just a little thing that we use when we're trying to view major or minor harmonic progressions, and that is exactly what we are doing here today. And if you have questions and you're watching this and you're just lurking in the background, good on you. Ask questions if you want. We're just going to take this and write some random notes out here and see if we can throw it in the key of F and make something that sounds great. Going over a couple different concepts on what you can do, what you don't want to do, what you want to stay away from. So, notice there's a double line right here. It's darker than the rest. The end. This is called the end of the tune. I'm just going to put the fine down here. What we've got right here is a first measure, has nothing in it. And here's what I would like to just set out. Usually, through writing music, you would see something like this. 3 to a 6 to either a 2 chord or a 4 chord, the 5 chord, or the 7, and then back to the 1. Now, this is just a principle called the major or minor harmonic progression. Each time we go through this, it will look a little different, but the thing that remains the same is all of these different little things that we write on the board here are concepts. If we start this song on the 1 chord, it will sound great going to the 2, or it will sound great going to the 4. One thing you would really want to avoid when playing a 1 chord to a 2 chord is something called parallel movements. We would never want to have a melody that is pretty, doing something like, how about F into our G minor? Because it gets really repetitive. Notice how these notes, when they move, they go directly up. Well, what that looks like on a piece of music is all the notes shift in movement. And the idea to get away from that, you want to have incongruent or different ways of moving a note. So you would move in opposite directions, and that doesn't create anything other than the contrast between these notes, which is also wonderful when trying to think about music. So one thing that we want to write down here when we're trying to do this is think about moving in step. There are other ones in here. We don't really want to do leaps. Or bounds. I'm going to put an X through it. No leaps or bounds. What does that mean? That means if we're going to play a note, and let's say that we're going to start off our whole song on the 1 chord, all right? So we want to have the tonic here. So let's write the tonic here, and let's be very mindful from this. Tonic here as well. So we're going to start our song off in the 1, and then we're going to come all the way down to the last measure, and we're going to end on the 1. Now, what we don't want to do is create melodies that are boring. This isn't probably going to be the best melody ever written, but it will be a melody. Now, bear with me. We're just going to take one of the notes from this. How about we take a C note? The reason why I chose the C is not the F or the A, but it is in the key of F major. It is the 5th. F to C is a perfect 5th. So in playing this, the first one I want to do is maybe choose middle C. It's an easy one to locate. I'm going to put it right here. Haven't really decided what kind of note we want, nor have we decided what our tempo is yet. So if we were to play, let's say 2-2, we would have 2 beats per measure, and then the half notes would get the beat. So if we have this, well, there's 2 beats per measure. Let's make this a quarter note. There's our C. The reason why we wouldn't want to jump from C up to a high C, that would be an octave. Now, if there's nothing wrong with going, but that is a huge jump. In fact, if we were to go to the 7th, it's a dissonance. So what we want to do is we kind of want to avoid dissonance. Again, if you are going for that sort of motif or feeling to have a song which has dissonance, like something like if you're looking for that feeling, then sure. But we're going to try and play something simple, make it sound good. We want these in the beginning when we start writing. We don't want to get outside of our diatonic chord, meaning when we're starting to write melody lines, try not to use any accidentals. Just stay within the 7 notes that are in the keys. So, stay diatonic. Ali. Let's see if I can spell today. All right, so our first note is going to be a 1 note. It's a quarter note. So our values, whole note, in this case, we would be playing all the beats in the measure. Our half note is worth 2 beats. Our quarter note is worth 1 beat. And then if we move through the concept of all our values move in half because we're playing in a different time, you can see those notes as being the same. Don't get scared about tempo or rhythm. It's not too terribly hard. Since we can move in step or move in nature, and I don't want to jump to a D to have a F major to a D minor, a 1 chord to a 6 in the same measure, I'm going to stay within the notes of this chord. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just play the A. C, D, E, F, G, A. I want to get to the A. So the A I want to get to is going to be right here. But I want to move in step by playing another quarter note. So by doing this, I fulfilled the first measure. This is now a complete measure. It has an F note and a C note, and they move in step. C to F. Yeah, it's going to be our big old step. It's a 4th. But it's not any different than moving in step here and completing that. It's the last part of our scale. When we get to the A here, I kind of want that A to drift and take the whole measure. So we can do maybe a dotted quarter. A dotted quarter means this would be worth 1.5. And then maybe we could have an 8th note as a passing note into our next measure. That would feel like C, F. And since we landed on A, 1, and we could go to our next note. I think I want it to be a B flat. We'll put it right here. Again, 8th notes, you fill in the hole, and because it's an 8th note, you want to put your quaver or your flag. When we do this, we can read out that we'd have 1, 2, 1, and. On the 2 and, we would be throwing this. So 1, 2, and. When we move to the next note here, we get to choose and decide where we want to go, but look where we're at. We have an A and a B flat. Well, what chord in here has an A in it, and what chord in here has a B flat in it? Well, it looks like our 1 chord, our 3 chord, and our 6 chord have an A. So I'm going to put that there. 1, 3. Actually, I'm going to do it in a different order because I can foresee the future. 1, 3, and a 6. Now, what we just did was we started the song with the 1 chord. So to play the 1 chord again, it feels a little static. Don't even need to hear it to know if we're going to be doing this. You know, it's going to fill the same chord out. So I'm going to get rid of that 1 chord and leave the 6 as a possibility in parentheses. So maybe we'll go back to that and change it to a 6 chord. Our B flat here. All right, B flat's in our 2 chord, our 4 chord, and our 7 chord. So I'm going to put the 2 chord here, the 4 chord, and then the 7. You betcha. All right. And you know what? I can just get rid of the word here, tonic. Let's just put 1. We're going to be marking these out in a second. And then next key we could go to? Well, it's an open palette. Let's see where that melody line takes us. Do we want to go down in step or up in step? I think that's a fun melody. Yeah, so we do B flat here. Well, let's play some quarter notes and let's move it to an eighth note. So we've got 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So we're playing what notes? We're going to be playing a G, right? Or an A. Moving in step. And then landing back on F. I think, yeah. Yeah. Write in your notes on your staff. Realize you're below the B line, so it's more than appropriate to take your stems, put them on the sides. Remember, you need to mark out your notes for eighth notes. There we go. So what we've just created is a walk down. We've got our A, G, F, and E. So A, G, F, and E. If we look at this as being two dyads right here, what chord would best fit here? Well, if we're looking at just chords and what we're doing right here, we would have something like this. Our F major is being played as our 1 chord. And then we have the option of going to our 3 chord, which is our A minor, or the 2 chord. That's a pretty interesting. I like the G minor. Let's keep the G minor there. So we'd have 1, 2, 2, 1. So let's get rid of this. Keep only the 3 chord here, which is our A minor, and then move to our 2 chord, which is our G minor. When we stay here and land on the F, it's not only appropriate, but okay to end our phrasing on the same thing. So we'd have I already started playing a melody in my head. So maybe change it to a deceptive cadence here. End it on a 6. If we do that, it would give it this. I like that a lot. So let's end it on the 6 chord here. And we could put that out for 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. I think it sounds good with a whole note there. So I'm just going to take this and make it more appropriate in the middle there. Cool. And let's make these staccato. Let's start this piece off. This is pretty much set in stone, so I'm going to put these here. 2, 3, and we're going to have maybe a mezzo piano, and we're going to get slightly louder. So we're going to be doing a crescendo. At here, we're definitely going to be up to, I don't know, mezzo forte. And then let's bring this back down from mezzo forte to piano. So we'll be doing a crescendo, and then a decrescendo. Little dynamics, that'll let us know what we're going to be doing in the future here, and how we're going to like just plan through it, see these notes moving. Now, one thing we're doing is we've been playing with different notes. If you were to just play with quarter notes through the whole thing, one, that last fast phrasing wouldn't fit in, and it becomes a little boring, a little static, a little going nowhere. So the idea between writing a melody is you want something that maybe sets a theme or a motif. Well, that's the beginning part. If we were to call that the beginning part or motif A, motif, A motif, right here, it makes sense to complete that same motif that you would do in the beginning phrasing of a da 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 down here, da 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 da, and finish it. So what I'm gonna do right here is I'm gonna replicate this note, the C, and I'm gonna replicate the F, making it sound exactly like the first measure, letting the listener know that there's a central theme. When we go through this, the next part, I get to choose whether or not I want to go to the F there. So we can play the, sorry, it was an F to start. So we have a F to an A minor, to a G minor, to a D minor. Now I'm playing the same, but do we want to play it, stay on the D minor, and maybe play it as maybe a major seventh? Have a corresponding, maybe that would be our inversion. Have another A minor. I would say that staying maybe with sorry about that. Clear some room from some of those dynamics. And then when we go to here, I say we stay on the 6th chord, keeping the deceptive nature. Maybe do an inversion. Another thing I would say when you're starting to do melodies, writing them for the first time, stay away from inversions. Like you can write your inversion names out, but the idea is sometimes it's a little tricky to see that in the beginning because you're not used to seeing all these different silly rules. Learn them, then break them kind of mentality. I'm going to do one right here just because it fits in. I'm used to doing these. Right here, when I have the D minor right here, I don't want to play it in the root. I'd actually like to play it taking the D, F, and A, and then moving the D up top. So when I start that melody line again, playing the F and the A, I can play 2 notes at once to get a cluster. Right? Because it goes right to it. Because that C, F is part of my note structure, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to write a little 6 right here. And that means that it's going to be in the first inversion. Now, frankly, you could write these in a couple different ways. If you're in the Western ear, it's going to be like 6, 6, 4, 6, 5. When we have a third note added onto our triad, we would call it 7, 7, 4, 7, 3. What we're seeing right here, if we had nothing, it would be that first inversion, second inversion. You could have 6, 3, 6, 4. What I would like to explain is later. I think the British do it well. The European way, it's A, B, and C. So rather than having this, you would have this is the first inversion. It would be A. Ta-da. Other than that, I like to write these in just so you see it. Sometimes it's confusing in the beginning, but we will know that that's an inversion and learn how to start writing this. Thusly, when you play a chord over the bass of this still stays the same. But the note that you're now using that is going to be played along with that would be your D note. So the lowest note that needs to be in here on that D, even though the melody line is C, F, needs to be the F because the second note in a D minor is not a D, it's the F natural. Groovy. So our melody line is far. 2, 1. And here's the idea. Do we want to write that in as a harmony? Yeah, I think so. So first time we had a cluster, the D and the F, or the D and the C. I'm just going to write it right here. Touching that note, as we said, it's a quarter note. I'm going to touch both of those together. And then when we get here, this is... we're going to play an A and a C. So when we play this A and the C, we've got the up top C, and we've got the A. Nice. Melody lines, yeah, you could write harmonies in your melody lines. If you choose to play just one note, that's also perfectly fine. Again, these are things that I would avoid in the beginning of writing. I would put them with our list of things to avoid, like stepping in, moving in step using triads, the three notes which are consonant that really sound good together. Avoiding leaps or bounds. Also being able to utilize just notes that sound pleasing and melodic. Now, don't get me wrong. When you play the dissonant note like a C and a B, or in the key we have here, the F and the E, that dissonance is funky. But if you add the chord of F major, that's a very pleasing chord. That's why it's really interesting to see how music works this way tertiarily. All right, our next notes we have here, and we're playing the harmony here. And I say we hold those two notes out. So we would have those through. And we might be able to work them down. So we've got our D minor in a second inversion. So we'd have, maybe go to a, E diminished maybe? Harmony. And I'm not going to do a flat 3 into a 3, but that would be a little accent note. Maybe we could write that in there. So yeah, after the A and the C, I would probably try and do the diminished. Or just 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, that works too. Let's keep it simpler. So here we're going to go down to the G, and we're going to do a third above that. You betcha. These are going to want to be flowing, so I'm going to put my marking here to make sure that they're slurred together. This is a legato marking. It's the opposite of a staccato. Staccato should be very short, detached kind of notes. And then our legato marking should be kind of flowing. So we would hold the and then for the last one, we're going to go to our F and play a full triad here. And the idea is I'm going to be centering it off of landing on the 1 chord, but our melody line itself ending on the FAC, we could do an F, A, C, and yeah, let's do a little accent note here. I'm going to put a little bitty 8th note, and I'm going to put a parenthesis around it, letting me know that it's, it doesn't need to be there. It's a grace note. It's going in between the concept of holding this dyad, playing this, and then falling down into our A note from an A flat. Sorry. There we go. So, a little bluesy. Little blues beat, and then it does land back here on the dyad. So we went to a D minor here in a different inversion, and then we had an C and an E, and we used the diminished. How fun! And then our diminished goes here, 7 diminished. And if we wanted to add more notes to it, I think it sounds good, but that adds a different cluster to it. Let's keep it simpler. So it happens to have our E diminish, and then back to the G minor. So our 2 chord, and then our 1 chord. So looking over here, does this follow our major or our minor harmonic progression? The minor harmonic progression is a little set up a little different there. It relies on knowing that the 1 is now a minor, the 2 is the diminished, but setup is still the same. 7 diatonic chords when you're dealing with natural minor. So the first chord, 1 chord, goes into a 3 chord. The 3 chord then goes into a 2. That fits. and then it goes into a 6 chord. Ooh, that broke a foundational rule. Kind of went the other way. Instead of progressing back to the 1, it did a deceptive cadence and went to the 6. Very fun. And then it stayed on the 6, which is interesting, but sometimes that does get stagnant. So we have something like got a marker on my hand. And then we've got our I could go either way with that grace note. Underneath this, if I did write a bass clef or a secondary line, I would be writing the piano notes that are there, but today we're just talking about this melody. Now, one of the really cool things we could do with this melody, since we've already created this, is to take a little gander at what we've achieved. We've written out a clef. We have our staff. We're utilizing different notes. We also used a dotted note, and if you're not familiar with dotted notes, they're wonderful. They help fill out space. If you are studying music notation, hey Jeffrey, how you doing? Hope you're having a good morning. Or actually, wherever you are, it's probably midday, isn't it? It's morning still here. Yeah, the notation going through, if we have a simple meter like this is, if we were to have a compound meter or something which is complex, we would have different variations of using notes. So if we're playing in like something which is a tuple meter, like 9/8, that means that there are 9 beats per measure, and then the 8th note gets the beat. Well, if we write something like a dotted half note, we could write 3 of these, and we would get 2 plus 1 is 3. So 1, 2, 3. 3 times 3 is 9. That gives us 9. So it's easier to see an idea music when you're trying to write it out in your head if you know a couple different time signatures like 9/8, 12/8, whether they're quadruple meter, duple meter, or tuple meter, meaning all music can be divided by 2 or 3. So when we're looking for different rhythms and polyrhythms, we find ourselves playing different variations of notes that we already know, but they look different on the staff when we're reading them or writing them. So what we've done is we found ourselves in the key of F. We have a 1 chord going to a 1 chord. It has a deceptive cadence at the end, which doesn't allow the listener to have a finalization on the idea. And then it follows that idea, goes to the diminish, and doesn't have an immediate resolution. It goes through a passing chord and ends on the resolution of the 1. This works well because you can move back and forth between any of these keys, and the whole idea for music is to write something out, get good at visualizing it, get good at playing it on your instrument of choice, and then kind of hear the chord structures around it. So the one we did for today, let me cap this pen so they don't all dry up. The only thing we are looking at here is you don't need to repeat the time signature. You do want to have the key signature. Make sure that when you're reading your clefs, you know that they're the same clef and that you're following this as being the first. And then the second thing I would say is number your measures when you're writing out of something. This would be measure 1. This isn't an anacrusis. This has a full measure, so the anacrusis is nay. Anacrusis is just like a pickup note. So if you had 1, ha, ha, and went 1, or rest, and then into it, if this note wasn't here and we just put a rest, it would change the note value. So measures need to be complete to actually be considered a measure. Measure 1, measure 2, measure 3, measure 4. Remember, this is our phrasing for our whole idea and concept for the period. This next one is going to be our 5, 6, 7, and then finalization on 8. The reason why this helps is if you're talking with your music about talking to somebody else about your music, it is much easier to say, hey, the 8th note movement that descends in the 3rd measure is great. Can we put a passing note in there so we're not just doing... Can we put like... Do we want to have 2 8th notes or a 16th note? Do you want to change it to have like... There's a multitude of things you could do, and if you write it out and go, oh, I don't like this, and I'm going to change this to a different note, you could go back, and if it's numbered, it's so much easier to talk to people about where you are in placement of the motif and the different phrasings. So, this looks like a full tune. We've got everything numbered out. We know where our movements are. It ends the idea right here and then begins another one right here. We've got our dynamic markings and we've got our motif, which repeats here. Notice how this one did repeat, but we utilized a different note. That is completely acceptable. In fact, if you were trying to test out of a college level course and they gave you the first measure or two measures and they're like, complete this period, you would go through, the first thing you would do would be to copy the first one just to let them know that you understand the context of giving the listener something to latch onto. Being static or getting rid of notes that don't work is great. Utilizing more than just a quarter note, utilizing half notes, quarter notes, dotted quarter notes, eighth notes, whole notes. If you could utilize all different types of simple meter notation, perfect. And then when going through here, utilizing your dynamic markings and putting them in really help. The reason why I write it like this rather than writing F, A, G is because if I didn't want to play this in the key of F and I wanted to switch it to the key of C, I could easily go 1 chord, 3 chord, 2 chord, 6 chord, 6 chord in an inversion, 6 chord to the diminished, and then to the 2, and then the 1. And because I know that the 1 would have ended in a parallel motion, I do an inversion on that C. I wouldn't have wanted to go like that because the notes would be moving in parallel. So if I went like this and then went up, it changes the way that the two hands go. The bass hand is going, oh, I don't have accordion, my bad. The bass hand would be moving in opposition. You would have D minor and then moving up to this inversion and then moving down. Notice how the hands move in separate directions. It doesn't sound like moving in parallel motion. It just sounds too full, like wood blocky. So here's what it looks like in the key of F. Not bad. That though, having a little cluster, that would be our A9. So here's where it gets really interesting for me. When writing something like this and putting it on a piece of paper, utilizing the circle fifths to see what's close, and then going through the whole thing, what I like to do is see how many steps I could break, see if I can move to a different chord, something which is close or relative, but not quite. So in the key of F, inside the chord we have a B flat. Would a B flat have worked for any of these? We have a B flat here. If we wanted to do two chords and do like a F major, A, B flat, G minor, D minor, D inversion, G minor, B, and then diminished, G minor, E diminished. If we were to add two chords right here and utilize this B flat, the 4 chord, and then down here we utilize the G minor to the E diminished to the G minor, we're quite literally doing like a 1-4-1 kind of thing there, where it feels very plagal. E diminished, G minor, E diminished, G minor, F. Anywho, As with anything, you could beat any information into submission and make sure that anything else is done. You could move notes around. You could change the way that one thing flows to the other. So rather than having it as just being like in a piano setting, you could also have it with strings. And a lot of these melodies, when you see them as being something different, it starts the foundation for you being able to write multiple melodies. Now, this is just a melody in the key of F that went through a couple different changes. What we tried to not do, we tried not to have huge leaps to jump up from C to C or C to B or B flat. No dissonant notes, because we want everything to stay kind of consonant with that 1, 3, 5, so they feel good playing together. The idea that we wrote out our notation, you don't necessarily need this, but in a chord chart, if you give this to somebody else, it is much easier to read what your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are in a given key than to try to guess. Secondary to that, if you don't write this as having just like a name, like a key name, then you get to play in any key. You can move this to the key of G if you want it. G major, B minor, A minor, E minor. And what I would suggest to you is when you do write melodies like this, whatever your instrument is, go ahead and play it with that instrument and see if you could come up with something cool. Personally, I really dig playing guitar now. I used to play a lot of bass as my main instrument. And so if we had this and we were playing something along the lines of this, we have F major, A minor, and then our G minor, and then we have our D minor. To make this flow, I'd be looking at the root F, and then I'd be playing that melody line. C, G and B flat, or maybe the higher G, and then the B flat up here. Now I'll be moving it. Maybe even a D. Maybe if I change that, use one of the different notes in the melody for the G minor there, and then ending on the F. Hitting that diminished there, key here, we would have like our, or we could have an authentic. Yeah, I like the idea of having like a passing note, D minor, G minor, and what I just did there, in my mind, those are parallel motions. So I would want to have something like, avoiding that F major 7. Anyway, if you enjoyed this concept, please subscribe, put something cool in the comment section. Tell me what your instrument of choice is, what you've been working on. If you do have melodies, throw them up on your social medias and post a link to it. I would love to see some melody makers. The whole idea of doing this is to expose people that are just starting an instrument like the guitar, or if you've got a banjo or a mandolin sitting around. Everything, once you learn the scales, F major, G minor, A minor, B flat, C, D, E, F. Each instrument has a different way of doing it. Ukulele, guitar, stuff like that, tuned up and forced, has a third in there. Mandolin, this. Easiest way to visualize music, however, though, is with like a glockenspiel, a easiest way to learn notation is to write out the circle fifths, and then whatever your instrument is, learn those 7 notes of the major scale. You can also learn all of your different diatonic notes that are part of your chromatic scale or your diatonic scale, and that will lead to be able to making melodies. So if you're listening to music or you're making music, the whole idea is to have a good foundation in music so you can hear like, I don't know, what's a random song about the band? The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. If we were playing it, to be able to hear somebody going, Virgil Cain was his name, and being able to go, okay, here's the chord, play the chord out. Once you get the chord structures, being able to go through the notes and notation to understand where they fall in rhythm. The next step is to see the notes being played either as single individual notations or as dyads or as triads, as chords. Once you see that all these pieces kind of fit together, the next thing is to layer in dynamics and then to feel comfortable playing somebody else's song. So cover songs, in my opinion, are meant to be foundations to learn music structure. Some bands do it right, some bands don't do it right, some bands don't do it at all, some bands do it too well. The idea is there really is no right or wrong, rhyme or reason. It's just the way that you perceive it and how you're able to communicate it to others, and then how you write music and how that music comes off. So as a ender to this, maybe check out a couple different types of band. Check out 80s Black Sabbath with Dio. Check out Frank Zappa in the late 80s for the pop synth stuff, using multiple different members for multiple different types of iterations of the band, but playing the same music just in different styles. Check out, how about Tom Waits? Tom Waits is a very interesting artist, and along those lines, if you find an artist which really toots your fancy, throw it my way. Put it in the comment section. I would love to hear about it. And as we talked about, if you enjoy this concept and you're looking forward to writing your own music, I would suggest jumping on here and trying to do something really, really cool with your own music, posting it somewhere and getting a little feedback, because criticism is the best way to learn what you're doing wrong. Somebody will definitely tell you that you're doing it wrong. So if you notice any oops daisies inside the process here of explaining how to write a simple melody, please put it in the comment section and we'll get back to you. If you enjoy this, check this out on every Monday and Tuesday. We do something like this, and there is over 10,000 videos on this particular YouTube channel that you could go and have fun with. Hey Jeff, thanks for being here today. If you're still here, have a happy Monday. Aloha.